Namaskar and good evening, everyone. I am Elora Tribedi, Assistant Professor at the School of Historical Study, Nalanda University. Today we have with us Professor Osmund Bopearachchi, an eminent art historian and numismatist of international repute here at Nalanda University. Welcome, sir. Under the sterling leadership of present Vice Chancellor Professor Sunaina Singh, since 2017, a slew of measures were taken to reinvent, create, and strengthen the edifice of this historically renowned Nalanda University in its new avatar. And we have been closely bound with growth roadmap. The School of Historical Studies of Nalanda University engages in a program of rigorous inquiry into fundamental questions that addresses historical experience within and beyond Asia. School of Historical Studies is committed to opening windows of knowledge on interconnections between time, memory, and history in Asian and non-Asian cultural, historical, and philosophical context for its students and its teaching community. It offers internationally competitive master's and global PhD programs. The School of Historical Study is uniquely poised to study history from comparative and cross-cultural perspective, involving theoretical and methodological frameworks derived from textual studies, philology, visual, oral, and material culture, archaeology, and art history, among others. The university is making sincere efforts towards creating opportunities for its students to reach out and interact with experts in the field through its distinguished lecture series. In the post-pandemic world, the blended mode is adding a new dimension to it. Conversations such as these at the School of Historical Studies are meant to keep the spirit of inquiry and the quest for history alive in our mind. On this occasion, the School of Historical Studies at Nalanda University is pleased to have today's distinguished lecture on the theme Indian Ocean Trade through Buddhist Iconographies. With these words, it's my pleasure to welcome our eminent speaker and esteemed guest, Professor Osmund Bopearachchi, to the dais. I also invite our respected Dean of School of Historical Studies, Professor Abhay Kumar Singh, who is also the Dean International Relations, to the dais, and also to welcome our distinguished guest on the behalf of University and the School of Historical Studies. I'm requesting our Dean, sir, Professor Abhay Kumar Singh, to come here and to share his introductory remarks.
Namaskar, welcome to everyone. Distinguished speaker, Professor Osmund Bopearachchi, the esteemed colleagues present here, guests joined online, our promising students, and all Nalanda community. A very hearty welcome to each one and all of you. This is an auspicious day, as a very fortunate occasion for us when we are here in the gracious company of a distinguished scholar who has successfully made a sterling imprint of Asian scholarship all around the world. The eminent numismatist historian, archaeologist, and art history scholar has, with a continuing study, already deciphered and documented over 800,000, that is 8 lakh, ancient coins, and has made remarkable contributions towards enhancement of the source material for Indian history. To his credit are innumerable new discoveries, rectification of proper chronologies of mainly of lesser known dynasties who ruled India and nearby. And finally, he made corrections to the biased historiography, for which we are very thankful to the scholarship of our very eminent professor here. Today, we feel privileged with your visit to the campus, Professor Bopearachchi. We welcome you with all honor in the Nalanda University campus. It's a pleasure to say that our distinguished speaker is an admirable friend of India who has encouraged and supported a number of young Indian scholars over years. In his own way, he has been connecting Indian scholars with those in the West, acting with goodwill. This matches well in context with Nalanda University, which has a mandate to connect to the world through the knowledge route. Nalanda has in recent years emerged as the University of Future, which presently students from over 30 countries, largely Asian nations, is standing here. While the ancient Nalanda is celebrated in history, the present Nalanda is creating a new history. The tireless work and all-round contribution of Madam Vice Chancellor, Professor Sunaina Singh ji, in building the net zero campus, and on the other hand, a unique academic architecture is applauded all around. I introduce you to the campus as I welcome you to this university, saying that the net zero campus, which is a zero waste and carbon footprint free campus, has involved traditional ways of water harvesting with the state-of-art net zero technologies, energy cum water management, and soil conservation. A solar farm has been installed, and the university today is variously awarded and recognized as the Green University. More than this, a high reputation of the reincarnated Nalanda University has been built diligently under the leadership of the dedicated Vice Chancellor, and now Nalanda has the distinction of being the nodal institution for the ASEAN-India network of university that is facilitating exchange programs at different academic levels. Talking about the academic architecture created by our Honorable Vice Chancellor, we have a cafeteria model and interdisciplinary teaching approach of niche courses. Different schools offer courses like Sustainable Development and Management, Environment and Ecology, Nalanda Heritage, Archaeology and History, Cultural Anthropology, Ethnoarchaeology, Energy Studies, Hindu Studies, Climate Science, Energy Modeling, and a variety of short-term courses and languages. Our distinguished speaker, as I know you, and fortunate for me, you have been one of those ideals of many of the young scholars who have imbibed many things, but none has been able to imbibe the humility that you possess. And I wish that with the scholarship, the same qualities that you hold and for which you are loved and adored by most of the people all across the world, these should also be a part of influence. In Nalanda, the ethos of Nalanda has a great respect for these qualities which I mentioned and I find in you here. You have been, as I just introducing as in a friendly way, have been a Marco Polo and a Huinsang who has visited around the world most of the Buddhist sites, even the ones that have been destructed and which are placed in the remotest corner. and been from Spain to China and across the world so many times. Your connections have, to the best part that I want to say here is, have been always with the view that you get the benefit of all those connections that you have made for the students, the younger generations, and particularly you have never missed focus on South Asian and Southeast Asian. So being very much familiar with the support that you have given, extended to students and teachers and young faculties and old people also, in countries like India, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and of course, I can name a number of nations here, has been one of those things that has not only you have cultivated a new crop of scholars. Here, we have a great appreciation, and I would say that we must give a round of applause for that. Distinguished speaker, as I welcome you here in the capacity of representing the university and the offices of the international relations and my own school, where I have very bright colleagues with me and all the faculty community of Nalanda, we look forward for more collaborations, which begins with your learned lecture today. Welcome and thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I will now try to give a brief account of the academic excellence of our esteemed speaker from his brief CV of 40 pages. Professor Osmund Bopearachchi is the Emeritus Director of Research of the French National Center for Scientific Research, CNRS, and also an adjunct professor of the Central and South Asian Art, Archaeology and Numismatics at the University of California, Berkeley. He's also a former visiting professor and member of doctoral school of the Paris Sorbonne University. Professor Osmund received his PhD from the Paris 1 Sorbonne University and a higher doctorate from the Paris 4 Sorbonne University. He is a numismatist, art historian, and archaeologist, author of 16 books, 6 exhibition catalogs, 148 research articles, 14 book reviews in reputed international journals, 2 databases. He has also been editor of 6 volumes. He has carried out archaeological missions in 29 different countries. Professor Osmund is also a recipient of a number of prestigious international awards. French Academy of Inscriptions and Belles-Lettres bestowed most prestigious awards to 5 of his books, and Georges Perrault Medal being the most distinguished one. He has been conferred with the Order of Academic Palms by the French government and the Order of Constantine the Great by the Greek government. The French Academy of Inscription and Belles-Lettres awarded him the Prix Hirayama for distinguished contribution to the scholarship on Asia for his most recent book, When West Met East, Gandhara Art Revisited, in 2 volumes. Today, Professor Osmund will be talking about the symbiotic relationship between Buddhism and trade in ancient South and Southeast Asia, basing upon the textual narratives, archaeological and art historical research across regions. Today's lecture will illuminate the patterns of circulation and exchange between the India and Sri Lanka in particular, and more broadly across the Indian Ocean. It will also outline how, from early history, Buddhism was closely linked with the merchant class, which came to support Buddhist monasteries and other institutions. Sir, the floor is all yours.
First of all, I would like to thank my dear friend, Professor Beke Singh, for the introduction. I know Professor Beke since 1991. It is a long path of friendship, and I had met him at several times, been to several archaeological sites in India with him, and also he came to France. And I hope he will come to Sri Lanka also one day to see our work. And this is today. It's okay, right? Today you are my oldest Indian friend, although you are 10 years younger to me. Thank you very much. And also, I would like to thank Dr. Elora Tribedi for the wonderful introduction, also for looking after me like your father. Thank you very much. And also, I'm very much honored to have you, Professor Rajeshwar Amitapalli, being here, and also all the staff members, and also the students, and those who are joining me from joining the talk from outside Nalanda. So I'm starting with this image of the 8th and 9th century wooden double outrigger sailing vessel from maritime Southeast Asia depicted in a bas-relief of the Borobudur Buddhist monument in central Java, which is dated to the 9th century. The reason why I am giving this talk is both maritime and inland trade brought together peoples of many cultures, languages, beliefs, and aesthetic aspirations. Traders were, to a certain extent, the mediators of this cultural interaction, as were the Buddhist monks and nuns, philosophers, artists, and diplomats who travel across merchant networks. As a result, not only goods, but also philosophical thoughts, ideas, and artistic traditions were exchanged. Buddhism, like Jainism, favored profit-based trade more than Hinduism, which actively discouraged seafaring. Understatement to say that archaeological evidence, especially coins, metals, gold, silver, bronze, and iron, ceramics, pottery and amphorae, glass objects, beads and jewelry, and seals, among others, allow us to understand the growth of trade activities, which I'm not going to do here today. Since Buddhism actively encouraged trade and invited donations by rich merchants, the study of Buddhist iconography can make an important contribution to this discussion. Aside from hundreds of inscriptions detailing those contributions and Buddhist texts, extolling merchants who supported Buddhist complexes, Buddhist visual culture in the form of paintings and ex-votos can help us evaluate the dynamics of trade and the chronological and geographical orientations of routes. Buddhist communities were established along trade routes linking important political and economic centers where they provided hospitality for merchants and other travelers. This positioned Buddhist practice to spread dramatically as merchants within the Buddhist tradition expanded the geographical range of their commercial activities. The growth of the maritime mercantile networks, in particular, facilitated the movement of Buddhism from India to Sri Lanka, then to Southeast Asia. Within this process, Buddhism was not merely a passive recipient of the largest of merchant classes, but actively promoted itself as protector of trade as mediated through rich textual and visual narratives and the development of divine cultures. In the Nidhanakatha, composed in the 5th century CE in Sri Lanka, Buddhaghosa praises generous gift of Anathapindika, the wealthiest merchant in Sravasti during the time of Buddha Gautama, as one in a long string of pious gifts made by merchants to the Buddha. In the story, Anathapindika buys Jetavana Park for the Blessed One by laying Krashapana coins over it and building a 30-acre monastery. Interestingly, there is no evidence for the existence of gold coins during the lifetime of the Buddha Gautama in India. But in the 5th century BCE, when Buddhaghosa was writing these stories, gold coins were in circulation in India and Sri Lanka. The spread of Buddhism from South Asia to Southeast Asia is closely connected with the growth of maritime and fluvial networks whose flourishing inland and international trade centers were located in ports along the coast and navigable rivers. The location of emporia along rivers facilitated transactions with the interior regions. I'm giving you two maps, one of Sri Lanka, which has about 109 rivers, not the tributaries, fall into the sea. Among them, at least 5 were navigable in the 5th century. And also India, we know about all the, starting from Indus, then Ganga, and Kaveri, Krishna, all the rivers. I'm showing you this photograph just to give you an idea. The transportation of tea using the land route in Sri Lanka, 19th century, before the construction of the railway system. So it was very costly. Elephants were used, and also even a company like Lipton, which is famous today, they use the carts to transport them. So the fluvial transportation at that time was less dangerous and less expensive than land routes, because you just put the goods in the crafts and go down the rivers. I'm showing you another photograph on the top of it. During the Dutch period, to transport salt for about 120 kilometers from Puttlam to Colombo, they used these. And also the tea, for the transportation of tea, they used the rivers navigable in Sri Lanka for this purpose. So my whole argument is, in ancient world, India or Sri Lanka, there were no man-made harbors. That means dugout harbors like we find in Rome and Greece. Ships were kept in the sea, and the goods were transported from the small boats inside the country, making use of the fluvial system, the rivers. So the discovery of a shipwreck on the southern coast of Sri Lanka, dated to the 2nd or the 1st century BCE, I'll come to that, containing glass ingots, black and red ware, iron and bronze bars, and grinding stones, is a revelation in this context. So this is a Buddhist monastery where there is an inscription written in Brahmi, the king giving the right to the monks to take taxes from the boats and of course the ships or the small crafts going along the river inside. So where you have the big lake, I excavated as the director of the French archaeological delegation, where we found furnaces for iron smelting and for making steel. The shipwreck was found by 2 fishermen. While they were looking for lobsters, they came across the shipwreck and they informed the Director General of Archaeology, and then I was asked to intervene. So with the help of my colleagues from the CNRS in Paris, University of Berkeley, University of Texas A&M, and also other colleagues from Turkey, and also my Sri Lankan colleagues from the Department of Archaeology, we started the excavation. So we did carbon-14 analysis. I sent the carbon samples to 3 laboratories, one in India, one in France, and one in America. So all the 3 samples gave the same dating with 150 minus and plus. It can be dated to the 1st century BCE, making this shipwreck the oldest shipwreck in the Indian Ocean. It doesn't mean there weren't done any before. There should be, but we haven't found them. Other important discoveries, these glass ingots, so dating back to the 1st century BCE. Apart from the glass ingots found in Jerusalem, going back to the 7th century BC, in whole of Asia, these are the oldest known glass ingots so far known. And also it had pots, about 3-meter depth of black and red ware, the late megalithic period, so giving again the confirming the date that we got from carbon-14, and also sometimes full pots as well, and also the bars of copper and iron. So ship was carrying a load, a huge amount of goods, and also grinding stones. These were not for sale, but for grinding spices in the ship for the navikas, for mariners who were in the ship. So if you look at the pattern of the establishments of Buddhist monasteries in Asia, especially For example, if you take Indus River, which is 3,610 kilometers long, I mean, going up to the Himalayas, the Indus served as, again, for the fluvial transportation. So all the Gandharan sites, I'm just showing you Sarderi, the Taktibai, and Dharmarajika in Taxila, they were all sculpted, placed around the Indus River, and also the tributaries like Suat and Kabul River. And if you look at the pattern here where we are today, I mean, looking at all these sites, Bodh Gaya, Sravasti, Varanasi, they are all placed or established along the rivers, connecting Ganga with Neranjana and others. So, you know, all these sites, including Saranath and also Nalanda, Bodh Gaya, and also Vaishali. I am skipping the Mahanadi because it is a specialty of our colleague here, Dr. Elora Stubedi. But so again, if you come to Amaravati and Nagarjunakonda, and also Panigiri, and up to Kanaganhalli, because of the Bhima River connecting, again, we get the river pattern. So the Buddhist monks established their monasteries along the rivers. Same thing in Sri Lanka. Anuradhapura, which is inland, the first capital, and it is connected to Mantai from the Malvatue River. When the trade shifted from west to east towards Southeast Asia and China, the capital also changed from Anuradhapura to Polonnaruwa. The river Mahaveli connects Polonnaruwa to Trincomalee, which is the 5th largest natural harbor in the world. So again, we can see all the Buddhist sites along the Mahaveli River. So if you go to Irrawaddy in Myanmar, the river is 2,210 kilometers long. Even today, we can go up to Mandalay, passing through Pagan, which I did in a ship. So it is still navigable. And all the Buddhist sites are situated along the river. So this is Pagan, where there are more than 3,000 Buddhist establishments, small, big monasteries. The photograph I took from a balloon in around 6 o'clock in the morning. And then we have Thailand with the Chao Phraya River, which is not very long. But again, if you look at Ayutthaya and Sukhothai, these sites are situated along the rivers. Same thing we can observe also in Java with Prago River, which is very short, but despite that, Borobudur, dating back to the 9th century, Chandimendur, Chandipavan, Ratabuko, all these sites are situated along the river. So, as the trade routes evolved from coastal to direct navigation and the destination fluctuated according to the decline or rise of political power, the makeup of merchant communities also changed. Thanks to literary sources and archaeological evidence, we know to a certain extent the identities of these mariners, traders, merchants who ventured across the Indian Ocean. Some Buddhist mural paintings and sculptures enable us to guess their identity, like today's selfies. These generous traders put their portraits. I'll show you a few of them. So here we are at Ajanta, cave number 1. The male figure seated in the middle of a scene is holding a wine-drinking cup and surrounded by his entourage. He has been identified by Monica Zinn as Kuera, the king of the north, one of the Chaturarajikas or Chaturamaharajika's 4 great kings of 4 directions. He is shown dressed in Persian garb with a long tunic belted at the waist. The fluttering streamers emanating from behind his head evoke the depictions of Sasanian kings and ancient Persian art. This type of fluttering ribbons appeared for the first time on the Parthian coins and also on the Sasanian coins. He's dressed like a Persian, and also he is served with a jar of a Persian culture. So here we have the depictions of Persians in Ajanta. One of the murals, this is cave number 17 at Ajanta, tells the story of Udyanin and Gupta. Udyanin was a courtier in the capital city of Kapilavastu, and a messenger of King Suddhodana, the father of Gautama Buddha. While in the city of Shravasti, Udayin falls in love with Gupta. So this is what we see. The couple, I mean, is in love and surrounded by everyone. But look at the intrusion of the person coming from our right-hand side. He's not an Indian. If you look at his garments, the way he dressed, he's certainly a Persian, and he's holding a Persian jar in his hand. So again, this is another selfie of a merchant who donated this painting, or I mean, who commissioned the painting in Ajanta. And again, another one, this is the descent of the Buddha after preaching Abhidhamma to his mother, who has now become a god, 3 months and 7 days after. So Indra and Brahma, accompanied by Indra and Brahma. So we can see also Utpalavarna, the bhikshuni who changed herself into a man, or Chakravartin, to venerate the Buddha. So this is the scene, just to give you an idea. So if you look at the delegation accompanying King Udyana of the region, you can see they are Ethiopians or Egyptians. They are not the way they are dressed, and the way, I mean, of course, the headdress. So these are Ethiopians. Again, the selfies of the Ethiopians who may have commissioned it. I'm taking you now to the southern part, Andhra Pradesh. The sculpture is in the Madras Museum, Government Museum. This is the story in the discussed the lineage of Vipassi, Digha Nikaya, and you can see the king Banduma, who receives some gifts. So on one side you have his two daughters. Because of the merits, one became the future mother of the Buddha. So what is interesting is these are the traders or the gifts received by the king. So one is absolutely a Roman, the way he is dressed. Other one is again an Ethiopian because of his hairstyle. Very few people observed, I mean, nobody observed this because, I mean, they were interested only about the iconography of the incident. I'm also taking you to some sculptures from Nagarjunakonda. These are from the site number 37. Three of these pillars, I mean, it's the same pillar, they are now in the Nagarjunakonda Museum, and there is one in the National Museum in New Delhi. So before the Sasanian entered the Indian Ocean trade, Parthians, Scythians, and Kushans were active during the first 3 centuries of the Common Era. So here we have a Scythian, the way he's dressed, because he has the Phrygian cap, which is a typical Scythian cap, and also he's holding a cup, certainly for alcohol, and his garments, shalwar kameez. So Scythian here, again, I mean, this is of course engraved on a column, or on a pillar. So Scythians were active in there. And also I'm showing you another Scythian from Gandhara region, now in the Iko Hirayama Museum of Art, but it came from Gandhara. So you have one in Gandhara and one also in Nagarjunakonda. So you understand why he is drinking wine. So below that, you have the women dancing and with the containers of wine or toddy, as one may imagine. The other person, 2 men wearing knee-length, long-sleeved, high-collar tunics, belted around the waist, over baggy shalwar with horizontal folds to the ankles, and holding long spears, resembles Parthian, or rather a Kushan. So as you can see on the reliefs of Gandharan art, it's certainly a Kushan who is depicted here. So you can see these are very characteristic sleeves of the Kushans. So it is, please go like this. When you dance, you can just throw it like that and then dance. So it's a very interesting phenomena again. Again, we see that the lower register depicts a man seated on a couch served by a woman, and the containers under the couch are certainly meant to hold alcohol. It is no wonder why many amphorae containing wine were found in southern India, in particular in Pattinam, Periyar Delta, in Kerala, Arikamedu, in Tamil Nadu, and in sites of lower Krishna Valley. I'm referring to today's Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. So these are some of the containers of wine and garum and olive found in the Platinum excavations on the west coast in Kerala by Cherian and his Professor Cherian and his team. So they were identified, Roberta Tomba, who passed away about 1.5 years ago. So you can see the provenance of these containers. While the great stupas of Amaravati, Kanaganhalli, Nagarjunakonda, and the Krishna Valley bear witness to the political and economic supremacy of the respective ruling dynasties, the proliferation of these monuments also underscores the religious motivations of the local Buddhist population for the construction of cultic sites. The resources needed for the construction and embellishment would have been provided by the devout members of the Buddhist mercantile class who were well established in cities such as Dharanikotta or Dharanekataka, the capital of the Satavahanas, and also later Ikshwaku in Nagarjunakonda. What is interesting is, according to the inscriptional evidence, they were published by Lahiri and Sirkar, there were two monasteries. One is the Sihala Vihara. According to the inscription, the Buddhist monks from the Mahavihara, from Namadradapura, they were living there. And another inscription talks about the Chura Dharmagiri Vihara, where there were Sri Lankan monks. It is extremely interesting to note this because monks were living there in today's Andhra Pradesh, and they had these connections. Because of this connection, a lot of imports, these are reliefs, portable reliefs, taken by traders, monks, nuns, and others as, of course, as a gift to the monasteries in Sri Lanka. They were mainly found in Bodhigara, the shrine for the Bodhi tree. So the networks between India and Sri Lanka, established by Buddhist communities, also became vectors of artistic exchanges. So this excavation was done during the British colonial period, 1894. It is a Bodhigara, and most of the sculptures have disappeared today, despite my all efforts to find them, apart from the some parts of the Bodhigara now you can see in the, in front of the Colombo National Museum. Among them, the one on our left-hand side, broken slab, it is the dream of Queen Maya. If you compare it with what was found in Amaravati, the elephant is missing, the six-tusk element, but we are absolutely certain it was imported from Andhra Pradesh, especially from Amaravati, because it is that style, and it is made of hard limestone, commonly used as Andhra marble. It is not yet marble, but hard limestone. The second one is the interpretation of the dream by Maya. So I am just putting you a parallel on the other side to have a look at it. And also on the sculpture found in Sri Lanka, you can see the bead and pearl border, which is of Greek inspiration. And again, in the Bodhigara, it was, established as Asanagara. It is not true. From the excavations by Charles Godukumbere between 61 and 62, these are very much fragmented. All of them I published recently. What is interesting is I'm showing you this one. It is a wind gunner figure. He has wings like the Cupid in the Roman art. So this was found also in the Bodhigara, and I'm giving you some examples. And also a Nagini, you can see the cobra hood behind, like the one in Nagarjunakonda. Again, hard limestone. This was found as accidentally by the monk of this vihara in Sisamaharama, as he told me, while he was, going around the stupa, he found, wrapped in a piece of tissue, this sculpture, because it was dug out by illicitly by a treasure hunter. So it is quite interesting. Although the front part is gone, this should be the presentation of Rahula to the Buddha. Now of course the Buddha after the enlightenment, when he visited his father in Kapilavastu. So it's again, I am showing you a counterpart on the other side from Amaravati, now in the British Museum. Again, in Jetvanarama, while doing the excavations in 1986, they found these ones again in the Bodhigara, the shrine for the Bodhi tree, where you have a unique sculpture where Mahamaya is led to Lumbini. You can see the tree behind it for the to give birth to her son, future Buddha, Bodhisattva Gautama. And you can see the parallel from Nagarjunakonda. And again, these Vruksha Devata, there were two, and they were also found in Nagarjunakonda, where you can see the Vruksha Devata, like Salabanchika, holding a branch of a tree. And this one was found in southern part of Sri Lanka, which is later style of Nagarjunakonda, where you can see the renunciation of the Bodhisattva, Kantaka bidding farewell by licking the feet of the future Buddha, and Brahma and Indra taking the hair of the Buddha and also the Jatamakuta, the headdress. And then this one is a very crude style, but can be dated to 4th or 5th century from Nagarjunakonda style, where you have a Chakravartin with all the 7 treasures. So the householder, woman, elephant, horse, wheel, jewel, and a counselor. This reminds us of the other counterparts that were found in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana of the Chakravartin. Then again, in the complex of Vidurangala, this slab was found. Unfortunately, my photograph is very bad because there is a glass in front of it. So this is the great miracle where Buddha, where the fire came from the shoulders and the water from the feet, and again fire from the feet and the water from the shoulders. And this was found here. Along with the Buddhas of the past, these are the Manusya Buddhas, Kashyapa, Konagama, Kanakamuni, and others. And on the other flap, we have 2 Bodhisattvas, extremely difficult to identify who they are without the attributes. But these are the earliest depictions of Bodhisattva in Sri Lanka. And this one, which is the oldest relief ever found, where all the 7 weeks after the enlightenment of the Buddha are depicted, which I published recently. As you know, because there's a huge confusion in the text, like Sanskrit, Lalita Vistara, and Buddha Charita, and also Mahavastu. Only the Pali Nidhanakata gives a complete account of the 7 weeks. So they found, they follow the Pali Nidhanakata because this was also certainly commissioned and came from Nagarjunakonda because this is again the hard limestone, which people could find in this region. So you have the enlightenment of the Buddha and the Maras attack, the first week, second week, third week where he was walking up and down, fourth week, the fifth week is broken. This is the moment that the 3 daughters of Mara came to attract the attention of the Buddha. And then we have the snake, Muchalinda, and the 7th week, the Tapaswa and Balluka. Other important sculptures from Sri Lanka are the images of the Buddha. The first images of the Buddha were directly imported from Amaravati and Nagarjunakonda, and they were found, for example, in the photograph. This statue was found in a garden of a Ayurvedic doctor while he was digging a hole, hole in the garden, and he immediately saw that there are statues. So the Department of Archaeology could intervene and rescue them. And here we have a statue of Amaravati with this typical gesture of the Abhay Mudra. And also when we look at the sculptures of the Ayaka, that means 4 frontispieces facing the 4 directions, we have enormous amount of copies from the Andhra school. Here we have, this is from the Abhigiri Dagaba, dating back to the 1st century, but the sculptures would be in the 2nd century. I will come to that. So the stupa was built by Vattagamini. And here we have a sculpture where you can see Sakyavardhana venerating the baby Buddha, or Sakyamuni Buddha. So this is the presentation of the newly born Bodhisattva to the family deity of the Sakyas, known as Sakyavardhana. So you can see the other parallel, the prototype, which is from Nagarjunakonda, the future Buddha or the Bodhisattva is not depicted in human form, but with a symbol, you can see on it the footprint of the Bodhisattva. And again, this is completely broken. It was not identified before. So here we have the two gods, Indra and Brahma, preaching the Buddha to reconsider his decision and preach. So here is the, just to give you an idea how it would have looked like. In Sri Lanka, unlike in India, there are very few depictions of the life story of the Buddha in relief or in stone. So this is one of them. It's Vahalkada of Jetwanarama, where you can see the Tusita heaven, and you can see a parallel from the Indian Museum of Calcutta, where gods, taking leave from the Tusita heaven to come to the earth. And here we have the Sarvantatra Jataka, which is quite close to the Sibi Jataka. Again, the equivalent from South India and from Andhra, it is also in Sri Lanka. And then all the stupas of Anuradhapura period, we have zoomorphic Nagas and anthropomorphic Nagas. So here we have the zoomorphic. Just compare the two. One is from Sri Lanka, other one is from Kanagannali. It's almost exactly the same. So these things were introduced by the traders or by the sculptors or the monks to Sri Lanka. And the Nagas were considered, according to Pali literature, as the guardian deities of 4 cardinal points. And then we have the anthropomorphic images of Nagarajas and Naginis. Nagarajas sometimes 3, 5, 7, up to 13 hoods, and Naginis with single one. The one to our right is very interesting. I colored them just to highlight the characteristics, but they are not, they were colored in ancient times, but they are gone. So again, holding the mirror. So parallel from Nagarjunakonda and what is found in Sri Lanka. Again, we have one from Nagarjunakonda and from Jetwanarama. And also, as you know, the one in the Jetwanarama, all the sculptures in the world, they were painted. Wherever it is in Egypt or in Greece or in Rome or India, wherever, they were all painted. The reason why we don't see them, very rarely we see them, especially in this one in Jetwanarama, but they are also inspired by the Potnakata or the pot of plenitude from Andhra art. So I'm showing you normally in Andhra art, these Purnagatas were placed on the dome of the stupa, but in Sri Lanka, they are placed at the entrance of Buddhist monasteries, for example, here. So this is not found anywhere in Indian art, but they took the symbol and converted that into own form of art. At the entrance of many Buddhist monuments, you have these Purnagata. This is also another painting that nobody ever understood the significance. It was found in Jetwanarama behind the Ayaka. So it can be dated at least to the 3rd century. So this is one of the earliest paintings in Sri Lanka. It depicts Kuera, the god of wealth of the north direction, with 4 hands. As you know, in India, the 4-hand Kuera is found only around the 5th century. Although Kuera was, there are depictions of Kuera. So here we have Kuera. What is interesting is the depiction of his palace is there, and also the pond with Hamsa. So there is this famous poem in the Digha Nikaya, and there forever beauteous lies where Kuera's lotus lake. This quarter is the north, they say. That is how the people call it. This quarter is guarded by a king, mighty in power and fame is he, lord of all the Yakshas folk, and Kuera is his name. So here we have Kuera. Why Kuera? Because he is the god of wealth. So if you look at some of the sculptures in Sri Lanka, so you get the Kuera, it's just throwing coins. So for the traders, like the Laughing Buddha, for the traders, this is an important element because they erected them before, of course, for their benefits. And the sculpture that I am showing you is again a Kuera because it has got a Sanka on one side, Padma on the other side, depicting Sankanidhi and the Padmanidhi. And these are the earliest depictions of Padma coins in the world. And again at Jetavana, this sculpture was first published in the 20th century. You can see the figure of Kuera, and in recent years, during the reconstruction of the stupa, the face is gone. But what is interesting, but nobody ever saw, was the two figures beneath. So you have one Padmanidhi and Sankanidhi with coins on their shoulders. So where the inspiration came from? Inspiration came from Nagarjunakonda, where there was a monastery, Sierra Vihara and the Chuladambagiri Vihara. So here we have Sankanidhi and Padmanidhi. Sanka because he has a Sanka, the conch on the headdress, Padma because he has a lotus on the headdress, and the coins are pouring from the head. So this is the inspiration for many sculptures in Sri Lanka, which is venerated today without knowing they are yakshas of wealth, in Abhigiri Vihara, where the coins, he is holding a string of coins like this one. So again, they are placed at the entrance of the religious buildings during the Anuradhapura period. So coins come from the head, going under the feet. Again, I am sure the traders love this because they are the Kueras, they are, I mean, yakshas of the Kuera, of the wealth. And this also another sculpture which shows they are in situ for 125 years, and nobody ever understood the significance of it, because first of all, it depicts a candelabrum. What we call a candelabrum in Latin is a candle tree made of acanthus leaves, which are, I mean, commonly found in Pompeii paintings. There we have cupids with the wings. So this has to come from Rome, because this is not Sri Lankan or Indian motif. And if you compare with the Pompeii paintings, which can be dated before the 1st century, where you can see the Cupid or the Eros, so they are there standing on the leaves of acanthus. And then we have this creature, again on the upper layers, which is a griffin. So his body is made of a lion and the wings, and then a beak of an eagle, again a Roman motif. We can date them to the 2nd century because there is an inscription dated to King Kaniktatissa, and the inscription is here written in Brahmi. So the depictions in the Ayaka or the Vahalkada in Sinhalese, and also the frontispieces in English. Why this is interesting? What are the contacts with Roman Empire during this time with Sri Lanka? According to Pliny's account, a Roman delegation came to Sri Lanka by accident. He was received by the king, and Sri Lankan king sent a delegation during the time of Claudius to Romanuka, which is Roman kingdom. So as a result, the contacts were established from the 2nd century onwards with the Roman Empire. But I am showing you a mummy which was found at the beginning of the 20th century in Rome, about Via Cassia. You can see the tomb there. The first archaeologists interpreted this mummy as an old woman, and recently my colleagues from the museum and also geologists and archaeologists, they confirm it is a 12-year-old girl. And in the coffin that you saw before, we can date it, and also there are other, I mean, it had a doll, and also this necklace. So they did, I mean, analysis, my colleagues, geologists from Italy, and they came to know these sapphires are from Sri Lanka, not from South India, not from Australia, was not at this time. So recently I heard from my colleagues from Italy, other sapphires were found in archaeological context. So the Roman contact with Sri Lanka is obvious. And then the fluctuation of trade routes south to Southeast Asia and China. We have to bear in mind, Chinese ships never ventured into the Indian Ocean before the 8th century. On the contrary, Indian and Sri Lankan ships went to China already from the 2nd century onwards. So the choice of Jataka and Avadana stories depicted in paintings and reliefs of Ajanta, Ellora, Borobudur, Pagan, and many other Buddhist complexes reflects the aspirations of donors who sponsored them. The stories connected with the fear of sea monsters and terrestrial demons like yakshas, rakshas, and pretas were the major threats and enemies of mariners who ventured into the perilous ocean and dangers of foreign land in search of wealth. So the story of Simhala has several versions and known in Valhassa Jataka, the cloud host Jataka, in Jatakamala, as the Dharmaladva Jataka in the Mahavastu, and the Sinhala Avadana in the Divya Avadana, as well as in many later versions, such as ones from Jain, Nepalese traditions, respectively. I'm not going to explain this. What is interesting is the story, which is in Ajanta paintings, of course, is very reminiscent of the legendary arrival of Vijaya to Lanka, who was also a merchant in search of new markets, with 500 followers when the Yakshini Kuyeni was ruling the island. And again, of course, the Ashrama Abhaya Avlokiteshvara, which is very common in Ellora, Ajanta, Aurangabad caves in Maharashtra, where you can see the, the, the presence of many depictions of the so-called Ashtama Abhaya, the 8 great perils. Avalokiteshvara in Maharashtra's cave complexes in Western India is clearly demonstrates that traders taking the dangerous land routes needed the Bodhisattva's protection against the enraged animals, poisonous reptiles, wild beasts, evil spirit, captivity, slavery, the sword of the enemy, and devouring fire. Out of 8 perils, one is dedicated to the seafarers who face dangers in the turbulent ocean. So I'm taking the best example, best preserved one from Aurangabad cave number 7, where you have the Ashtama Abhaya. So you have first the enraged animals. So Avalokiteshvara appears in front of the 2 traders in Anjali Mudra and a lion trying to attack them. So in Saddharma Pundarika, the famous Mahayana text, it says, if you are surrounded by evil animals whose teeth and claws are fearfully sharp, if you contemplate the power of Avalokiteshvara, they will run away swiftly. So this belief that Avalokiteshvara will protect them was very popular in whole of Asia, Southeast Asia, up to Japan. Then we have poisonous reptiles. Again, 2 traders in Anjali Mudra who were about to be attacked by 2 cobras, and Avalokiteshvara intervened. Again, we have a text from Saddharma Pundarika. Then wild beasts. So when you go in the jungle, in the forest, you certainly encounter wild elephants. So if you are surrounded by evil animals, if you contemplate the power of Avalokiteshvara, they will run away swiftly. So again, a wild beast. And then the evil spirits and demons. Even as you know, in India and Sri Lanka, the countries, the fear of darkness inside the forest. So you can come across the demons. Here the depiction is not clear. It's a mother holding a child, and you can see a demon behind it, and then Avalokiteshvara intervenes. Then the shipwrecks. So even if a cyclone were to blow the ship of one of these towards the island of Rakshas, demons, they would all become free from the danger of these Rakshas, demons, if there were even a single person among them who chanted the name of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. For this reason, he is called Avalokiteshvara. This is one of the main reason why Avalokiteshvara became popular in Asia. And then we have the captivity. If you go in the in the forest, isolated trade routes, you would be attacked by people. So the slavery and also the sword of the enemy. Instead of having a gun, they can have a sword, and then they can threaten and take your goods, and Avalokiteshvara can protect you. And if you go in the jungle, another threat is the fire. So Avalokiteshvara is capable of protecting you from all these dangers. So here are the dangers that the traders were painting. So why there are so many in Maharashtra? I don't deny that they are also in Odisha and also now in Bangladesh. I will show you with Tara. But why there are so many? Because in Maharashtra there is no fluvial navigation. All the rivers like Krishna, Godavari, they flow towards the west, not towards the east, not towards the west. So the mariners had to take the road. I'll show you in a moment. And this is the famous one in the Archaeological Museum of Ratnagiri. There is one in the Bihar Museum where Tara, gives protection to the mariners and traders who face these dangers. And recently I came across this one, which was found in Bangladesh, and it was sent to me by this scholar, and I'm very happy to see that. And again, I mean, it gives the connection. Of course, on the other day, Laura told me there are many others of this type of Ashtamahabhya Tara in the East Coast. So the popularity of Ashtamahabhya, it is not only limited to India, but it traveled also through the Silk Road. So I'm taking you to one cave in Mogao in late Tang Dynasty. This is Tunghong. You can see the painting right in the middle. You have Avalokiteshvara. There are many dangers, but I'll show you the ones that I show you. One is the enraged animals, so the leopards. And then you have the captivity and slavery. The trader is, he's kneeling down. Others are trying to beat him, and the Avalokiteshvara will intervene. And then we have the evil spirits and demons, and the devouring fire, and also the cyclones and shipwrecks. So again, Avalokiteshvara will protect you. So they started like Ekadashamukha Avalokiteshvara, 11-headed Avalokiteshvara in Canary Caves. It was, it propagated through the Silk Road until Japan, China, Japan, and also Korea. So knowing that Avalokiteshvara is the protector of mariners, we started a project which we are going to finish this year and come out with a publication at the end of this year. It was started with my dear friend Senrat Disanayake, who was the Director General of Archaeology, and the Kalpa Sangha from the Department of Archaeology, and the University of Rajarata with Nuan Abewardena, and also from Center for Buddhist Studies, UC Berkeley, Sanjot Mehendale, and one of our students, Kelly Powell, and National Center for Scientific Research with my other student. He is no more a student now. She's a director of the German Archaeological Institute in Bonn. So what we did was, this is a result of our work. Our starting point was Tiriyaya, where you have an inscription referring to Avalokiteshvara and Tara, saying that traders built a shrine for these bodhisattvas. So the exact nature of the inscription can be understood. In 1983, Sirisoma, M.H. Sirisoma did an excavation. In this Padhanagara, the double platform, he found these sculptures. So there were many, many sculptures among them, and especially Mahayana ones. And they were certainly imported from Bihar, certainly from Nalanda, if not from Gaya. So the statue of Adibuddha or Vajradhamma with elaborately worked out Jatamakuta, the dress, depicting Tathagatas, the five, Akshobhya, Amitabha, Amoghasiddhi, Ratnasabha, and Vairochana. So he's opening the lotus. This one, certainly, because in Sri Lanka there are no statues except the imported ones, where Buddha makes the Bhumisparsha Mudra, taking the earth as witness. So this is certainly imported from Bihar, from the Pala. And again, this statue of Avalokiteshvara, Padmapani, in Lalitasana, it has to come from here. So it shows the trade relationship between Bihar and Sri Lanka and the movement of traders. The Tiriyaya is very interesting because it has a river, it has an estuary where you can see. In Sri Lanka, there are two types of Avalokiteshvara images found. One is the Yogi Avalokiteshvara, or the ascetic type, and then we have the princely type. Princely type is this one with the Dambeguda Bodhisattva image, which is about 15 meters high. He's jeweled Avalokiteshvara images where the royal garments and highly sophisticated hara, keuru, kankana, nupura, and karana kundala. The other one is the Yogi Avalokiteshvara. Is essentially an ascetic figure that can be distinguished by the ajina, the hide of an animal such as the antelope or tiger, tied around the waist to hold the dhoti, plus he is devoid of all ornaments. So this triad, Buddha in the middle, Yogi Avalokiteshvara on one side, and the and the princely type, visible type, on the other side. They were misunderstood by many art historians, thinking that it's Maitreya. It's not Maitreya. It's the depiction of two bodhisattvas, Avalokiteshvara, in ascetic form and a visible form. The inspiration would have come from, again, from Maharashtra. Now I'm showing you the sculpture from cave number 2, where you have on one side, Avalokiteshvara visual type. On the other side, you have the ascetic type. It's Avalokiteshvara because Amitabha is represented in the headdress and also on the lotus, but he has the ajina, the Krishna jina, the skin of an antelope, which is of course later found on the Shiva images, and also Pasha, the bondage. So this inspiration came to Sri Lanka. Other important evidence came from Ashokarama. This is in the close suburbs of ancient Anuradhapura. The votive or the satsa was found there, and there is no doubt this is also imported from Nalanda. So this is a map of geolocalization of these sites. And we only need to complete the other site, which we finished before I came to India. And also the important discovery, I'm not going to talk about it because I talked about this project yesterday in the Bihar Museum, but just to give you an idea, this statue was found in this river flowing right in the middle of Anuradhapura by a fisherman who threw his net, and the statue came to the net. So of course the net got destroyed, but he was very kind enough to give the statue to the Department of Archaeology. So Avalokiteshvara stand on a base decorated with upper row of upward lotus petals and a lower row of reverse lotus petals. He performs with Arkamudra from the right hand and the Katakahasta from the left. So you have the combination of both ascetic and the visual type. I'll tell you why he is ascetic. Of course, the jata looks like almost a Shiva headdress, but he's not Shiva because Amitabha Buddha is depicted in the middle, right? And then because of the height, the ajina around the waist, and he has this yogi type, and this simple dhoti carved with descending pleats is tied to the waist by a multi-strand girdle. A flared tiger skin with a pendant forelegs, that's a mistake, is worn over the dhoti. The important characteristic of the tiger skin is the prominent display of the tiger face on the right thigh. So this is again interesting. This is the only statue we have of this nature, although it is found on the other sculptures because he is double. The image thus is both ascetic and priestly nature. Ascetic because of the tiger skin worn over the hip, the jatamakuta, and the looped cylindrical arrangement of the dreadlocks, absence of princely clothes and jewelry. Yet he is also princely because of his necklace, bracelets, finger ring, festoon girdle, and the pearl bands adorning the base of the high piled ascetic chignon. In this sense, the sculpture is unique. So I'm just showing you a parallel of the Anuradhapura one with the Indonesian one, which is in the Jakarta Museum today. This was found in Bingin, south of Sumatra. So again, you have the same figure of the tiger on the one found in Sumatra, and also the one found in Anuradhapura. To show the connections between Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia, these statues, of course, anybody can understand. This statue is imported from Cambodia, depiction of Avalokiteshvara, and it was found in the southern tip of Sri Lanka in a port site, right, in Devundara. So it shows the exchange of goods. So the Indonesia's position on the maritime trade routes favored the gradual introduction of the Mahayana cults from India and Sri Lanka. During our work, about 5 years ago, one of our students from Berkeley, Kelly Powell, came across this inscription. It is extremely important because it's a Vajradhatu Mandala, part of the Sarvatathagata Sattva Sangraya. And it was the stupa was built in the 1st century BCE, but it was established as a Mahayana stupa. And in the following following a pattern, it was installed there, and it was found in one niche with the image of Tara, one Vajra, and also a statue, a relief, certainly which would have come from Maharashtra, where you have Buddha in Dhammachakra Mudra, and on one side Avalokiteshvara as a prince, on the other side ascetic nature. The stone's inscription that Kelly Powell identified as representing a portion of a Sarvatathagata Sattasangaya Vajradhatu Mandal was discovered on November 10, 2010, when conservation work is being carried out on the southwest portion of the dome of Abhigiri Stupa. It was found in a niche made expressly for the purpose of housing and indicating the purposeful ritual placement of the object. So this was placed after. The niche was found at an elevation of 125 feet, a depth of 3.6 meters, and 30 meters south of the West Ayaka towards the South Ayaka. If the archaeologists did a proper excavation, they would have found the fourth niches in the stupa. So, quite interesting to conclude rapidly. The voyage of Vajrabodhi, as we know, it is expansion of Mahayana cults from South Asia to Southeast Asia. According to the biography of the great Tang court monk Vajrabodhi, written by his late disciple, Liu Qiong, probably compiled within 2 decades of Vajrabodhi's death. Vajrabodhi was originally the third son of a family in central India. Having become a monk at Nalanda monastery at the age of 10, and having studied the treatise of Dharmakirti at the age of 15, and having received full ordination at the Nalanda monastery, here we are, not this one, but the old one, at the age of 20, Vajrabodhi was instructed by Avalokiteshvara, who appeared in front of him and in these words. So he first said, you go to Lanka and venerate Simha, Sri Lanka, and also the tooth relic of the Buddha, which he did. So he went to the Adam's Peak, where which is commonly accepted during the visit of the Buddha to Sri Lanka. There is a footprint of the Buddha on the top of the mountain, and also he visited the Tooth Relic Temple. So following his advice, he went to Sri Lanka, and then he came back to India, and then he got the message, now you have to go to China. The king of South India was reluctant to send him because the route is very dangerous. But since Avalokiteshvara instructed him, he came to Sri Lanka. He came to Bozila, which is Beirut today, and there were 30 Persian ships there. So he got into one. The ships were trading for gems, precious stones. So he went with them in the ship. After a month, they reached the kingdom of Vijaya, Sri Vijaya, in Malaysia, important center for the expansion of Buddhism from 8th to 12th century. Then he encountered the thunderstorms, foul winds, monsters. So it took many, many years for him to come. At the end, except his ship, all the other Persian ships were destroyed. But he could go to the Tang dynasty, and only there. So this interesting episode, which took place in the 8th century CE, reveals much about the seafaring in the Indian Ocean, the spread of Buddhist thought, and the goods exchange in trade, uncovering and identifying traces of Vajrayana Buddhism in one of many ways to study the trade in the Indian Ocean. The visit of Vajrabodhi first to Sri Lanka and then to China was a result of the growth of trading networks to the east. The maritime route the Persian ships took with the Vajrabodhi on board was the same as that frequented by Sinhalese bhikshunis, Buddhist nuns, on their way to South China. Chinese sources record that during the period from the last years of the Jin dynasty to the end of Tang dynasty, 11 Sri Lankan Buddhist missionaries were sent to China. At the end, these monks, these nuns could speak Chinese. Vajrabodhi and his disciple Amoghavajra, masters of esoteric Buddhism in the Tang capital, enjoyed the hospitality of the Tang emperor. The bronze statue of Avalokiteshvara found in the Malvatoya is not only unique in style and iconography, but also is a valuable testimony to the religious exchanges between Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia that were facilitated by the flourishing of maritime trade. In conclusion, seafaring traders and caravan merchants were not only undoubtedly interested in the exchange of commodities to make profit, but also were, as revealed by epigraphic and literary evidence, the earliest donors and important patrons of Buddhist establishment in South and Southeast Asia. The resources needed to build massive religious monuments would have come from both royal patronage and the mercantile classes, the latter whose wealth was based on flourishing inland and international trade centers located at the ports along the coast and navigable rivers. Likewise, the spread of Buddhism and Buddhist iconographies in South Asia and Southeast Asia is closely connected with the growth of the maritime networks that facilitated the movement of Buddhist merchants and traveling monks and teachers. In this way, Buddhist iconographies developed in a cross-fertilized context, incorporating the sentiments and aesthetics of their respective traditions while simultaneously stimulating the creation of new forms of art. It is those traces that enable us to understand the development of maritime networks. I thank you very much.
Sir, thank you very much for such illuminating lecture. We all are well awake. Within the span of 1 hour, Sir took us to several countries of Asia with his brilliant photographs and not only explained, actually imprinted on our brain how we look at iconography in a very, very smaller terms. Actually, how art and iconography have been looked in only from aesthetics and all. Actually, they are the results of people's interactions, actual people's interactions, their movement across the seas and across the land. Sir told us about that oceanic networks are supported by inland riverine networks. The coastal Buddhist sites are results of that. As well as he talked about traveling ideas, circulation of images, and how from very early time, images and sculptures, which are often painted, were the carriers of religion, faith, as well as and important cultural exchange, which today we are talking about shared cultural past throughout the Asia. I think it was brilliant to hear you, sir. And now we can have question answers. I would request the friends and the professors who are present with us virtually to type their questions in the chat box. But as the students and respected professors and dean who are present here, we can have questions from them at the beginning. Then we'll request Dean Sir to have his presidential remarks. So if you have question, you can raise your hand. I would request you to introduce yourself and then address with this question. Try to be brief and to the point so that we can accommodate as many questions as possible. Thank you.
Good evening, all. And I want, sir. Actually, I don't have any question. I just want to comment because this is my still I'm confusing because I wanted to see you in person. I'm Geet Kumar Tunga, SBS PCR. I'm doing Buddhist studies. This is my final year, so I'm from Sri Lanka. So I wanted to see you in person. So thank you very much, historical study professor and other staff members. Thank you very much. This is a big fortune for me to see you in person. So thank you very much. And I had one misconception about Maitri Bodhisattva. Because during class time also I asked from ma'am, I think, yes, it's very confusing. It's a big confusion because we identify Maitri as with Buddha statue in Sri Lanka. So it's a big confusion with me. So I asked more than 10 times from ma'am, is this true or wrong or right? So now I'm clear with that. And thank you very much. Thank you very much on behalf of all the Sri Lankan students. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we can move to some of the questions which are present online. Um, First of all, Nupur ma'am from Jadavpur has thanked you. I think that is wonderful. You can read, I think, sir. Uh, as well as Kasun, who was also a former student here. He also has congratulated for your lecture as well as thanked you. Also, Professor Syed Tanveer Nasreen also has congratulated you. Um, I think Sushan Mitra Sir, which is also part of the Nalanda community, he has also congratulated you and have asked a question. His question is, along with the traders, what kind of text, mainly related to trade practices and to philosophical text, would have traveled along this route? What can we interfere in context of language exchanges in the process? Would you like to take that, sir?
A very interesting question. There are plenty of texts about the trade activities which I didn't talk today. Of course, I have written about it, and also my other colleagues. You get the Greek and Roman accounts. There are plenty, accounts talking about the trade. But for this subject, the most important evidence coming from the epigraphical evidence. For example, all the inscriptions that were found in Socotra, studied by Ingosrao, the book came out, and also the Kanaganhalli Stupa, the inscriptions were studied by my colleague Oscar von Ninuber, and also the other inscriptions read by Sirkar and Lahiri from Nagarjunakonda and Amravati, and also there are hundreds and hundreds of inscriptions on Sri Lanka referring to Navikas and all that. And also from the Chinese side, about, concerning Sri Lanka alone, 44 Chinese writers write about different activities connected with Sri Lanka, and these texts are now translated into French from Chinese by my colleague Francois Thierry. We are hoping to translate that into English one day. So that's one thing. About the language of the traders, there was a very interesting question by the audience to Lou Lancaster, who was a former professor of Berkeley, with whom I started the project of Avalokiteshvara because he covered all the sites in Southeast Asia. I only worked on Sri Lanka, but been to most of the sites in India, everywhere. So the question is, why would the mercantile ship would accept a Buddhist monk in their ship? Because a Buddhist monk can speak many languages. So they had the literacy and they know the languages. So the Buddhist monks were there. As you see, I told you about the Sri Lankan nuns, bhikshunis going to China. Within 1 year, they learned Chinese. So the Buddhist monks and the clergy, they had this capacity of learning the languages, and they were very helpful because they get a free ticket from the traders to go to different places. At the same time, they serve for the purpose because they did the translations for them. I think some traders would have, like I speak Hindi, nobody can understand my Hindi, but I can understand others when speaking Hindi. So it is in that nature. So there are, plenty of evidence for the trading activities in the Indian Ocean. Thank you for the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We have a question from Ramaya Saravanan. I think the question is the similarity of Indian and Sri Lankan sculptures are very detailed, but are there any differences amongst them to indicate the cultural differences? So she has asked, actually, I think the similarities are clear, but if you like to talk a little bit about the differences, which can be also part of the cultural package, I think that is what.
I understood the question. Thank you very much for the question. The art is not copy and paste. It's never the same way. You can get inspirations from different schools of art. For example, Greek art was, Egyptian art inspired Mesopotamian art inspired Greek art, and Greek art inspired Roman art. So we know all that. And on this side, the Sri Lankan art, at least at the beginning, the book I wrote recently, Roots of Sri Lankan Art, they were much inspired by Andhra art, but they don't appear as just give you one example. The depiction of Sankar and Padmanidhi, their statues are in the round. In Sri Lankan context, they come only on the reliefs, or except one statue which is in the round. So they appear at the entrances of the temple. So it is not the same context. Now, for example, Potnakata, the pot of plenitude, they appear on the Amaravati Stupa on the dome. But in Sri Lanka, they never appear. So, and again, the story is, the way that they were interpreted in a different context is very interesting. It's not just copying the form of art. Every art has a role, and this is also what I wrote about in the book that I wrote on Gandharan art, when West met East. It's not copying the Greek art in Gandharan art, but taking the Greek motifs to tell a Buddhist story. So when the story is narrated in Gandharan art, it is no more Greek. It is a Buddhist story. But in that Buddhist stories, you can see people dressed like Greeks. Their furniture, they are all Greek. Their motifs are Greek. But art is not pasted in that way. So it is. So in Sri Lankan art, there are many ways that I discuss this in the book, which I couldn't do it in 1 hour. I think I have taken 1 hour and 10 minutes. I'm very sorry about it, Elora.
No, sir,
So it is very important to see how it is integrated.
So, sir, we have, I'm just moving forward, so because we have a lot of questions. So we have Ritvik Bachi asking, also this I would very much like to know from you. Can we actually locate the cultic specification of Ashtamayavatara? And did it travel from the Western India? Or I would say that, can we, again, as we were discussing about cave number 9 or 10 of Ellora, and then is it the other way around, or is it from, well, sir, please.
That you have to answer.
No, sir. I think this is actually, Ritvik, if I may, this is actually one of the most important thing that we are trying to locate. But I don't think that it is so easy to say that a cult or iconography just travel from one region. As sir has explained in his lecture today, things are much more complex. There are cultural and economic aspects related with iconography that also have to be explored. Sir, please add something.
It's very difficult to, you have worked more on the Odisha sculpture, so you know more than I do. No doubt about that. But regarding the Auliguteshwara Ashtamahabaya from Maharashtra, they can be dated very easily to 6th and 7th centuries. And also like Dekadashamukha Auliguteshwara from Kaneri. I would say personally, for the moment, with a lot of interrogation, that the Tara images came little later. I don't know. You can disagree.
Yes, sir.
You can
Yes, sir.
disagree
That's also. But the transition from
Yeah.
Ashtamavateshwara to the Ashtamavatara, that needs to be explored more. Okay, sir.
Thank you, Elora, for answering that question.
Also, sir, we have Soumya raising his or her hand. I would like Soumya to unmute him or her and then ask the question, if it's okay.
Thank you, Elodadi. I have also mentioned my question in the chat box.
Okay, so I'll read it from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Soumya has asked, sir, transition of culture, beliefs and ideas, motives, techniques is understood. can we think of mobility of artists and workers along the traders and monks? This is
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah, the question was first answered by Senrat Parnavitana when you first wrote the book on early forms of Sri Lankan art. The inspirations are such in most of the earliest ones. I'm referring to the 2nd, 3rd century icons found in Abhegiri and Jetwanarama stupas. He said at the beginning the Andhra artists were working for the Sri Lankan kings in, I mean, the same thing that I gave on the other day in the Ramakrishna Mission, the university, about the Persian art inspiring the early form of Mauryan art. So it's the same thing. The artists would have come to Sri Lanka. They must have trained. There, I mean, I couldn't show everything. I'm sorry because it's very difficult. The amount of work inspired by Andhra art in Sri Lankan art. I'm sure at the beginning, at least the 2nd, 3rd century, artists would have come. And then, of course, the Sri Lankan artists continued. So the good example is the concerning the Buddha images. The first Buddha images were imported. We are certain about it because we did the analysis of the geological aspects of the statues. It's certainly from Andhra Pradesh, the limestone. Then we have the dolomite and later granite statues, and they were made by Sri Lankan artists, certainly.
Also, sir, another question from online participant is regarding Ladakh. So particularly if you can talk a little bit more from Ladakh, the iconography and the text, which can also give us some idea about the trade routes. So are there any text and iconographic evidence from Ladakh region pertaining to trade routes? Sir, Ajitesh Mathur, as you can see.
Frankly, that question I can't answer because I have never worked on Ladakh area and my colleagues are working. So I will ask them. I mean, for the moment, if you ask me innocently, I would say no, it's too late for this period. I mean, it goes in a different way. If you look at the Tibetan art, which I'm familiar, and also the Nepali art, it is another route which is going upward, which is the continuation of Gandharan art into Kashmir, and from Kashmir to these regions. So I don't think Ladakh inspired other forms, but it's rather the other way. The Gandharan art in today's Pakistan, yesterday's India, it had a great impact on the Kashmiri art and later, and also the Ekadashamukha 11-headed Daulukuteshwara tradition. But anyhow, I will ask my friends who are working in Ladakh whether they could answer me.
Thank you, sir. So we have some of the SHS students also with questions here. I think, Azhar, you had a question.
Thank you so much, sir, for your very enlightening lecture. My name is Azad. I'm currently a PhD scholar in School of Historical Studies. My question is possibly born out of a few confusions. So, as you have rightly highlighted in your presentation, that there was in fact a persuasive and sustained multi-directional flow of Buddhist art or in a very wide geographical area, which was in fact giving shape to Asian interconnections. And then, and this was also possibly supported by the mercantile activities. So, these maritime networks were giving rise to coastal shrines and riverine shrines, and possibly many other structures as well. And these structures were also supporting the maritime networks, in fact. So, so how this symbiotic relationship between the structures and the networks operated in the early medieval period, what made these, in fact, maritime networks long-lasting, resilient to new changes that were coming up in the Indian Ocean trade?
This is what I try to explain. It is not linear progress of maritime network. You can see. So if you look at the contacts with Sri Lanka and South India, the first contacts, I won't say they are trade networks. That's the megalithic culture which is imposed in Sri Lanka. If you look at the patterns, I did this article with Professor K. Rajan looking at the black and red ware symbols which are similar to his excavations in Kodumanal. So then the first contacts start with Ashoka because becoming a Buddhist and also he encouraged seafaring. So the coming of Mahinda Thera to Sri Lanka to convert, so that was the first way of coming to Sri Lanka, but it didn't have a direct impact of Sri Lankan art at the beginning. So the first stupas, they must have made it with some mud or some bricks, all that. But the stupas that we see, they are mainly inspired by the Andhra art, because then the Sri Lankan monks were going to Andhra Pradesh, and Andhra Pradesh monks, when there were fights between the Theravada and the Mahayana monks, they went to Kanchipuram or they went to Nagarjunakonda, Amaravati for refugees. So these contacts were their positive and negative way. So then we get the first inspirations. And also you can see the other inspirations from the Persian art, and also the Roman art. And then all of a sudden, so first south, and then the north, and then shifting towards Pakistan, Nandra, and also Persia. The Persian ships were coming at the same time with Roman Empire. With the decline of the late imperial period, the Roman trade stops, Persian continues, and then the trade shifted towards the east. As I told you at the beginning, the first delegations of nuns going from Sri Lanka to China, they should have certainly taken ships, but these ships were going from west to east, meaning from India and Sri Lanka to China. But the Chinese ships were coming to until the 8th century. If you look at the ceramics and the other evidence, there is no evidence for the Chinese coming to Sri Lanka, South India, Ethiopia, and other countries before the 8th century. So this is another network. So and then out of that, I try to show you at the end where the inspiration can go from Amaravati and from Sri Lanka to Thailand. Most of the ancient Thai sculptures, they resemble mainly to the sculptures from Sri Lanka. And also my colleagues have written about it, Sunderberg, Jeffrey, comparing the Abhayagiri Padhanagara with the Padhanagara. This is double platform Mahayana establishment. It's a long story to explain, but they are Mahayana, and they are found in Ratabuko in Java. So it's not really a direct line. The focuses were because of the decline of the empires or rise of the other empires, they change. Accordingly, the network also changed, and also the inspirations changed. Now, for example, the one that I showed you with the cupids and griffins, this would have happened in the 2nd century, and Sri Lankan artists didn't understand a man with wings and a lion with a beak of a eagle, so they changed that into a lion at the end. The griffin became a lion. The cupid became, wearing shorts, like a dhoti, without the wings. So this is how the art, we can talk for hours and hours, but it's the shifting the focus of the trade horizons that change the art forms not only in Sri Lanka and India, but also in the world. In that sense, I don't know.
Thank
if
you.
Thank you. That was indeed a long question, indeed. But thank you, sir. So we also have Akshaya from School of Historical Study with a question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the lecture. So my question is based on the, so we discussed on the slides that stones were imported from Nagarjunakonda and Amravati to Sri Lanka. So why were the stones transferred from a specific place? Was it for to preserve the sacredness of that place, or was it because of the geography or the topography of that place? Because so much of extra work is being done. So why was it being transferred?
I will answer you from you can sit. You can sit. Answer you from a very recent event during the British colonial period. There are a place called Adisham. I'm sure you have been there, and also Hill Club. To construct these buildings, the stone was imported from Scotland. Right? In Sri Lanka, we have granite. Right? So it can happen. So it's a question of prestige. As you know, there are Chola temples built in Sri Lanka. The whole temple was taken to Sri Lanka by ships. So it's a question of prestige. When you look at the hard limestone, which we call correctly Andhra marble, which is of course an earlier form of marble, and this is a beautiful stone. So the first statues, I think the monks, the I mean, there were people were trading horses and elephants. So the statue is nothing. If it is 1 ton or 2 tons, it's not a big problem. And the other thing is they were doing the coastal navigation. So once you do the coastal navigation, you can have horses and elephants on the boat, and also you can have statues. So these statues were imported, but it's very costly. That was at the beginning. And then the reliefs, if you donate something, I mean, whatever your religion, whether you are Hindu or Catholic or Buddhist or Jain or whatever, when you gift something to the god or the monastery or the monks or the priests, you give your best according to. So it is exactly what is happening. So the offering and also this famous citation in Hyun Song, when he was in Sri Lanka, he saw a merchant offering a silk, a Chinese silk, and offering to the temple. And Hyun Song started crying, weeping, because he remembered his country. So it is what we do when we do our best. If a monkey is invited, my Buddhist colleagues are here. If a Buddhist monkey is invited, you give the best food that you can give. It doesn't mean that's the best in the world, but best for them. So it is, there is what we call the punya, the merit. You do things for the merit, whatever your beliefs are. So that, I mean, that's a way to explain the prestigious nature and also the punya nature, the merit nature of stones and other things. I don't know whether I answered.
Thank you, sir. It has been a very long Q&A session, and thank you for making our all confusions go. I hope there are no more questions. So, congratulations from my side, sir. And I am very enriched to be here because you cleared one of the, again, big puzzle for us to understand. Because we have been looking at Bodhisattva images from Western Deccan and other places, and also from Sri Lanka, and maybe mistaking them as two different bodhisattvas, whereas um, you clearly said that no, this is we need to relook at these images. So that is one of the greatest benefit I got for being here, as well as secondly, you also showed us that sometimes we are limited when we are trying to compare visuals and iconographies within borders. So we compare things within South Asia or Southeast Asia, whereas you have shown today that for comparative analysis and understanding cultural values of iconographies, we need to expand our horizons. So this is the two things I'm going to take away from your lectures. And I think we have a better person here with us, our Dean, sir, Professor Abhay Kumar Singh, to actually give the presiding remarks on this lecture, and then we can have Dr. Kashyap. Thank you.
I have nothing to add or make comment because the lecture, of course, has been really illuminating, enlightening, and particularly uh, the finer points in the art that you have brought to the notice, the attendants, the intruders, and their costumes and their fine designings, and you bring the identity of cultural identities you have pointed out, tells about the interesting, there's evidence of the interactions that existed long in the past. But as the story goes of Vetal Pachisi, and it says, then Vikram would answer all the questions, but the Vetal would not let him be at ease, and he would come with a fresh question. So like that jinn, that ghost, like I would, despite all the wonderful explanations, I would ask you one thing, and then I'll also try to give my own view. Like, we believe that it is the merchants who made the adventure and the monks who followed, and they spread the message. To me, it appears particularly that it was the monks who were the bigger adventurers who went forward first, and the merchants followed. Because who else do you think is more adventurous and more fearless than a monk? And here I would say, give credit to Bodhisattva of Lokiteshwar, like who gives protection, and the best protection would be to a monk who goes fearless And so if I am wrong, maybe you just correct me, that do you think it is the monks who went first and the merchants followed? So we give due credit to our Bodhisattva for bringing all the people together. And that is just a query, of course, but if like you to add something to that, I'll be very happy.
It's a difficult question. Which came first, egg or the hen? So it's exactly the same, because I think that things happen in a way because we have the traces of traders or navikas, mariners coming before even the Buddhist monks started traveling. I'm talking about
Yes.
the maritime, but the other way around, the monks didn't have. Who took the land route from Afghanistan or from Maharashtra to today's Afghanistan, and then to Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, then the Kucha, and then to Mogao, Dunghong, and to Xi'an. They should have gone with the traders, or they would have gone alone, like Fazian. He had few people accompany. In the maritime trade, monks just can't go because they need a ship where the traders were. For the same reason, I think Lou Lancaster was right. When the monk is in the boat, you get the protections, having as if you have Adukuteshwar in your boat. The story of Amogavajra, a teacher. So it is Vajrabodhi. The story is that his ship was nothing happened to his ship. All the other ships drowned. So it is again the same story saying that take the monks and go, and they will give you the protection. So it's a very good way.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So this is a wonderful, this is at least this question has been answered, which was bothering me. And now I just, in all seriousness and with all sincerity, I say that we thank you very, very much for the wonderful, not only just the beautiful lecture, but the slides and your presentation and your answering to all our queries. I think that it has been a very educating and very enlightening experience for all of us. The distinguished lecture has made a mark, and I think set us thinking also. Professor Osmund, I think that we have really received a very kind, what you say, the host. We are being as the host, we could not offer as much as you have given to us as a guest speaker today. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. So, Dr. Kashyap, sorry.
Namaskar and good evening. On behalf of the School of Historical Studies, it is my privilege to propose the vote of thanks on this occasion of the SHS Distinguished Lecture Series. Professor Bopearachchi's fascinating lecture enlightened us on the critical relation between religion and trading networks of the Indian Ocean region. By bringing into focus the specific history of Buddhism and trade in South and Southeast Asia, Professor Bopearachchi took us through a foundational exercise of the historian's craft. How multiple sources can be made to speak to one another across disciplines to create a larger historical narrative. This has been an enriching experience, no doubt, for the members of the faculty, but also students across schools who are now beginning to pick up the elementary skills of research. Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable work with us. For centuries, Nalanda has been synonymous with advanced intellectual engagements. We always remain deeply grateful and indebted to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Sunaina Singh, for providing continuous opportunities where the exercise of knowledge creation and dissemination becomes possible, much like we have seen today. Her vision, combined with her tireless efforts towards rebuilding Nalanda in the 21st century as a center of excellence, continues to inspire us. I extend sincere thanks to all the deans and members of the faculty for being a great audience. I deeply thank the registrar for his continuous support whenever we reached out to him. Thanks to the entire administration, AR academics, administrative officers, our library staffs, Office of Communication, for all their help and support in planning and organizing this lecture. An event like this, which is run on a hybrid mode today, cannot happen without the strong support of the IT and the engineering departments. Many thanks to them for all the cooperation. We are happy that many friends and colleagues from the academia and otherwise joined us virtually today. We thank them for their questions and insightful observations. Finally, academic events remain incomplete without dear students. Our students across schools and programs have been enthusiastic participants as well as attentive listeners. A big thanks to all of you. While we close today's session by inviting you all for refreshment, I'll just request Dean, sir, to felicitate our speaker for today with a small memento from the university. Thank you all. Have a great evening and enjoy the weekend.